Finally get to the final phase, which is achievement, which is you actually accomplish externally what you set out to. And most newbies fall out between here and here and then start this process over again. So most people only relive this over and over and over again without ever making it to here, which then naturally leads you to here, because then you have no desire to diversify because you now get it. And what do you do when you're here? You reset the target. And you say, this is where I want to go next. And because you've been through this process once, you understand that, you know what? Me going after this 10 times bigger goal sounds amazing. I'm gonna find out there's some stuff that sucks. There's gonna be a period where it's gonna really suck and it's gonna feel hopeless because I don't see how to get through it. I'm gonna keep chugging and then understand how to get there. And then I'm gonna get there, I'm gonna repeat the process. The one person that you formula to getting to $1 million plus. All you have to do is find one person that you wanna help. It's just making sure that you're very clear on the one very specific person that you are gonna help. That is the avatar. The next thing is you wanna give them one product. And the reason I say it's one product is that a lot of people overcomplicate their businesses too early. They're like, man, if I wanna double my business, I should sell them 3 things, right? And then I'll get them to buy more stuff. But the thing is that if you're under $1 million, you're just adding a ton of complexity when you don't even have that many customers. And so most times you'd be better served sticking with the one thing that you're selling and saying, how can I sell 3 times as many of the exact same person? And that becomes the problem that you solve. But most people get confronted with these issues and then go for the easy route. And again, this is like that building where you can add something on top really quickly, but it doesn't create the skyscraper that you want. Instead, you want to think, how can I do more? The third variable here is channel. Now, it doesn't matter what channel you're currently acquiring customers on. You can hit $1 million plus on literally any channel that you advertise on without going onto new channels. So if you do outreach, as in you reach out to people one-on-one to get customers, whether that's cold calls, cold emails, DMs, you can expand and continue to get more customers with that one channel. If you post content, you can keep posting content on whatever channel you're on and just do it better. Post more content, post better content. And by doing so, you'll increase the amount of customers, still with only one money-making product. Or let's say you're running ads. Obviously, if you're running ads, you can just spend more money on the ads, provided you're doing it profitably. And if you can't expand past $1 million a year profitably with paid ads, you have a business problem or you have a pricing problem. You don't actually need to add another channel, because then it again complicates your business, because you're like, okay, well, I'm currently doing, $500,000 a year on YouTube. You know what I'm gonna do? You might think, oh, I'm gonna start doing cold emails, right? As my next way of getting customers. Well, that majorly complicates your business when you're this early on. Now you might be thinking, wait, shouldn't I have diversity of how you acquire customers? I thought you said that was a good idea. It is, but you're so small, it doesn't matter yet, because you're not looking at a potential acquirer who's gonna try and look to decrease risk. For you just need to get better at doing the one thing that you do well, because you're really probably not that good yet. And as terrible as that may sound, it's probably real, all right? And so the fastest way to get to the million is to build it right from the get-go and not overcomplicate your business, which means you pick one avatar, one product, and one channel that you focus on until you get. The question is, who should I sell it to? AKA getting leads. And you get leads through advertising, which is the concept of my second book, $100 million leads. And then you get them to buy. But the thing that people mess up is that they then think, okay, I'm gonna do more of that. But what you actually need to do next is you go back to here and you fix the product and keep making it better. And then you promote it more. And then you come back and fix the product and make it better. And it becomes this virtuous cycle. So if we need to understand how to market and sell, then it means that you have to have one advertising method. There are 8 ways you can advertise. There's 4 that you can do, and then there's 4 that other people can do for you. You can do warm outreach, which is reaching out one-to-one to your friends. You can post content one-to-many, but to people who know you. You can run paid ads, which is doing one-to-many to strangers, or you can do one-to-one to strangers, which is cold outreach. And if you're like, man, no one's buying my thing, I can guarantee you that you're not doing enough of these core 4. Period. That's it, because these are the only 4 things that you can do to advertise. The next thing is that you can get referrals from customers, which are lead getters. Next, you can have employees who help do the core 4 for you. You can have agencies who run the core 4 for you, make content for you, do outreach for you. All of those things you can hire another business to help you with. And then finally, you've got affiliates, which some people call influencers, some people call endorsements, but it's somebody who already has an audience, already has a business, and that you compensate in some way to do the advertising for you, the core 4, to let other people know about your stuff. These are the 8 ways that you can advertise anything to anyone. And the nice thing is, when you're starting out for your first million, just pick one. once you pick the advertising method that you want, and let's say you're using lead getters, you have to learn one of the core 4 to then get lead getters. And that's okay. That's fine. That's part of business. These will always give you more leverage than the first 4. And that's okay. But you have to start with these first. So let's assume that you're just going to stick to the core 4 in the beginning because you're like, I don't want to involve other parties, which I recommend, especially if you're starting out. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to post content. That's what you're going to do. That's your method. All right. Now you're going to have all these people who like your posts, comment on your posts, DM you personally when you make content that they find compelling or interesting and say, hey, I'd love your help on whatever this thing is. Then you transition into sales. Now, it's so important for founders who are starting a company to be integrally involved in both of these processes. The reason you want the founder to be integrally involved in the beginning is 1, it's cheaper, and especially when you have less cash, that makes sense. 2, these are skills that are going to be required for you to succeed over the long haul. So you're going to want to understand them at a tactical level because when you bring someone else in the future, these lead getters, whether it's employees, agencies, affiliates, or whatever, you can teach them the right way to do it. And when they say, hey, that's not possible, you can be like, no, it is. Let me show you how. And then you have a litmus test of who's legit and who's not, who's going to help you on your journey. Whether you're hiring them or you're incentivizing them, it works the same. When it comes to the sales side, we want to get into a choreographed process, knowing what step 1 through letter Z of the process looks like to get someone from, I think this might be interesting, to giving you money. But if you don't know what you're doing first, you have to throw stuff on the wall and see what sticks. And a lot of it's just going to be your gut in the beginning and figuring out, whoop, that didn't work, whoop, that didn't, oh, that one actually got a response. All right, that's step 2. And you keep trying until you get to step 3, and then you keep trying until you get to step 4, until eventually somebody gives you money. And then you backtrack and say, what happened to this person that did these steps? Great, now I'm going to try and recreate that as many times as I can, and then that becomes your process. And that process repeats at each micro level too, because that might be 3 or 4 steps to get to the conversation where someone might give you money. And then what do you do in that conversation? Well, when I ask this question first, and this question second, and this question third, it's more likely that they ultimately buy. And so if you don't follow a script in the beginning, you better make one, because if you're going to eventually get out of sales, which you should if you want to scale, then you're going to be able to teach somebody else how to sell too. And one of the biggest issues early on is that the founder is the most convicted about the product, and you should be, it's your company. But people who come after you are never going to be as charismatic or as convicted in the thing that you have as you are, which means you need to follow a process to maximize the likelihood that the prospects that they speak with ultimately purchase. This is one back of napkin way that you can use. 33% goes to you, 30% goes to growth, which is new locations. And then this is rainy day. This is cash reserves for the business, cash reserves for you, and this is for new locations. Another way of doing it is something called a watermark. We know that we need to grow 2 locations, and this is a proxy. It doesn't have to be 2 locations. You could be hiring 2 people, hiring 2 reps, it doesn't matter. Or 2 more developers if you're a software company, it works the same. 2 more per month costs X dollars. We have Y profit. So all we do is we say, whatever the profit is at the end of the month, we subtract this, and then we have a watermark above which we always leave in the account. And then everything else, we distribute as cash flow. That's a different way of doing it. This is a little bit more aggressive if you want to maintain a certain growth rate. This one is a little bit more flexible. It really depends on you and your tolerance for risk. And that's one thing that I'd say I pride myself on in terms of our ability to help portfolio companies and newer founders who are creating their first kind of generational wealth, is these are hard conversations to have and are really important conversations to have. And you want somebody who isn't a financial advisor who's trying to get you to take as much cash out so that they can invest and get their 1% fee. You want somebody who's on the same side of the table as you, being like, I get where you're at, I can see where your wealth is, and also sees over the next 24, 36, 60 months what it looks like for us to just have that one big bloop so you never have to work again. We're now approaching the second level of wealth, the pinnacle of our second level, which is setting goals. And I think this is a really misunderstood topic. Most people think like, oh, I need SMART goals or specific measurable goals. Bad. I'll show you how I do that. All right, so rather than focusing on outcomes, we focus on activities. So the goal shouldn't be what happens, but the goal should be what we do. I had a buddy of mine, so they started doing 10 grand a month, 20 grand a month, 30 grand a month. And then he would fall off. And I was like, why do you keep falling off? He said, well, I make the money and I hit my goal, so then I like ease off the gas pedal. And I said, it's because you're defining your goals the wrong way. I see you as not hitting your goal every time you're not doing the activities. And so I said, make the activities the goal, and then you'll hit it every time and more. And so then he flipped how he saw his own success into simply, at the end of the day, did he do all the things that he said he was going to do at the beginning of the day? And then you can actually control your inputs, because inputs are what drive outputs. Don't make the goal outputs. say, what am I going to do that would be unreasonable that I don't hit these outputs? So for example, my inputs might be, and this is one of my favorite ways for thinking about like advertising, is something that I call the rule of 100. So the rule of 100 simply states that if you do 100 primary actions over 100 days, you usually get the first result that you ultimately want. Now you hook people by saying you're going to get the first result you want, but the key point is that you're doing 100 actions. And one of my little monikers that I would share with you is count in hundreds. All right, so when a lot of people are like, man, I did the thing, how many hundreds did you do? If I was doing warm reach outs, I'd say, cool, reach out to 100 friends a day. If I'm doing cold reach outs, I'd say, cool, reach out to 100 people a day. If I'm making content, cool, make 100 minutes of content every day. If I'm running ads, I'd say, run $100 a day. And each of those are activities that we can say, these things will drive these outputs. They make that the goal. And so at the end of the day, you can say, yes, I did it, or no, I didn't do it. Not, did I make a sale? Because no matter what, even if you didn't make a sale today, you should still do your 100 inputs so that you can make 2 sales tomorrow. So the second concept we talked about when it comes to goals is how we actually set goals for portfolio companies. And it's not the way that you think, but it is something that you're going to recognize because we actually use the scientific method. And here's how it works. 4 simple boxes. 1 is what problem are we actually trying to solve? A lot of times we spend the most time on this part of this because a lot of times people are like, oh, I think we need to redo our logo. Why? What is that going to accomplish? What constraint are we alleviating? Right? Because for us, we back our goals into the constraints of the business. Because let's say that conversion rate on our homepage is not a problem. Well, then why do we need to redesign the logo? Oh, we don't. One of my favorite ways to solve problems is to decide they're not a problem to begin with. So this is column number 1, which is what problem are we solving? The second is what's our hypothesis, which is an if-then statement. X, then Y. So what that means is, I say, my hypothesis is if our website is low conversion, that's the problem that we're solving. My hypothesis is that if we redesign the website, we will then get increased conversions. And then all we have to do is say, how do we measure X and Y? How do I measure that we redesigned it? I could say, yes or no, I did it. Or I could say that we hold a split test every Monday that we run over the quarter. That would be the X. That's something I could say, yes or no, we did it. And then Y, my conversion rate, let's say we're at 10%. And then I would say, is it greater than 10%? Yes or no? And then finally, the last thing is, did we do it? And then did it work? We figure out the problem we're solving. We figure out what our hypothesis is to solve it. We determine how we're going to measure whether or not we did or whether or not it happened. And then we say, did we do the thing? And then did it happen? Because we could not do the thing and then it wouldn't matter and we'd have to repeat it later and solve the problem of why are we not doing this thing. But if we did do the thing, then either it improved it or maybe we redesigned the website and the conversion rate didn't improve. So either that might not be the constraint or our hypothesis was wrong. And so this allows you to iteratively improve the business. So we covered the fundamentals of wealth creation. And we talked about how to create our first million, and now we've got it. And now level 3, we're gonna talk about stay rich and get even richer. Get rich once. So one of my mentors was an ex-Goldman Sachs employee. One of his mentors at Goldman Sachs told him you should only have to get rich once. And I heard that saying and it's really stuck with me, is if you play the game right, you should only have to play it once. And so that's why one of my favorite sayings when it comes to wealth building is that fortunes are created through taking huge risks with small amounts of money. But fortunes are preserved by taking small risks with lots of money. So we talked about why you should only have to get rich once. And if you are going to swing for the fences, you still need to be very sure that once you hit it, you never bet it all on black again. Which then leads us actually to our next one, people. So I'm going to explain a concept called the quad marketing calendar. All right. So you think about this as internal and external to your business. Now you've got prospects on this side, we got customers, candidates, we got employees. And so you actually need to be marketing in all 4 directions at all times. Most people spend all their time advertising here. They say, okay, I'm gonna spend all my resources advertising to get prospects. And then they convert those prospects over this money line and they turn those prospects into customers. But the problem is, if you only advertise in this direction, who's gonna deliver the thing to these customers? Well, you need employees, which means that you also need to be advertising to get candidates to turn into employees. And so this is ultimately the dual-sided nature of advertising, because as you grow the left side, you need to also grow the right side. If you want to continue to get these customers to buy again and again and again, then we also need to advertise in this direction to the customers to get them to buy again and again. So we advertise to turn prospects into customers. We advertise to get customers to become repeat customers. We advertise to candidates to turn them into employees, and then we advertise to employees to get them more engaged and to keep them engaged and keep educating them so they can ascend up and provide even more value to our customers, ultimately to the enterprise value of the company. So if you ever feel like you're a genius with 1,000 hands, it usually means that you're really good at advertising and turning prospects into customers, right? But you're really bad at turning candidates into employees and then training employees to get to become even better. And so the more you advertise here, the more you feel like you have to do because you have no one else helping you out. So let's say we've got our genius scenario, we've got an enterprise scenario. So if you're the genius with 1,000 hands, right? And you're making $5 million top line and $2 million of income. Every year, you make $2 million, which adds $1 million after taxes to your net worth. This is a lot like before, right? But here's the difference between the example I'm explaining now and what I was talking about before. In this instance, you add the $1 million to your business, but you also have a probably $10 million asset as business if this thing truly runs value. EV is short for enterprise value. So there is no enterprise value here because it's just a genius with 1,000 hands. You're just dealing with 1,000 helpers. Here, you own something that provides value to a group of customers that you can sell to somebody else, because if you require no work in order to provide the value, it means it requires someone else to do no work to provide the value, which means it becomes a more valuable asset. And so if I took a business from genius with 1,000 hands, making $2 million a year, and I didn't increase the revenue, and I didn't even increase the profit, but I simply removed the genius and make the structure of the business genius, the people who work inside of it and the processes and the systems that they follow, genius, then I add $10 million to the net worth of the person who owns it. And so one of the fastest ways to create wealth is make the thing that you have reliable, is to make it risk-free and make sure that it will last. And so even if it took you 2 years to do that, for you to get $10 million of an enterprise value or net worth gain, you'd have to make $20 million of income to get to that same $10 million. But meanwhile, while you're building it, you're still also making money in this scenario, which is what we basically do for the majority of businesses that we have at acquisition.com, is that we often take businesses doing 2 million, 3, 4, 5, etc., and then take them to this side and say, hey, let me show you what it looks like at 10 with a 7x multiple. And so now you go from a $1 or $2 or $3 million net worth to a $70 million net worth. And that is how you get wealthy. This is how you get rich. Now I want to be clear, you can absolutely get $2 million a year in profit with not a lot of people, or even just on your own, because with the increases of AI and automation and things like that, like we're going to see more big companies with fewer and fewer headcount. But until general AI comes in and just crushes everyone, people are still required to get to where you want to go. So if you want to not just make $1 million or a couple $1 million, and you want to get to 10, 20, 50, $100 million and beyond, you got to get the people side right. And now we go to the reputation side. Ooh, a fun one.
So have you ever seen like the midwit memes where it's like the IQ, where it's like the dummy and then like the middle guy and then like the guy at the end?
Chad.
Yeah. At the very end. A lot of stuff in fitness is like that.
That makes a lot of sense.
So it's like pick the right parents, eat protein, lift progressively heavier weight, and then you're like set schemes, ret schemes, blah blah blah, and it's like pick the right parents, like eat protein, lift more weight over time.
Have you ever gotten your testosterone checked? Of course you have.
Yeah, I had actually recently.
What's your testosterone?
It was 124.
124?
Yeah, super
What do you
low.
mean 124? I thought it goes up to like 1,000.
Yeah.
Isn't 500 like
300 to 1,000 is the
Yeah.
recommended range. I'm below the recommended range.
How? How is that even physically possible?
I've always been low. The highest reading I've ever had is 270.
you eat lots of soy?
That makes no sense, because I see that like the beard and the muscle. Don't you have to have the deep voice?
No.
It's like you have to have more testosterone.
You can be androgen sensitive. So I can be very sensitive to androgen. Some people are not sensitive at all. So it's like if you add testosterone to your system, like somebody will get a significantly higher response than other people. And so you have, genetic potential from parents, but you also have just like how responsive you are to anabolic hormones in general. Like some of the because the Olympia just happened for bodybuilding like this last week. A lot of those guys, some of the genetic factors that they have are just that their body is just more responsive to anabolics than other people. And so like you can just be more androgen sensitive. So like you need less testosterone to make the same muscle. And so like those ranges they're arbitrary. They're completely arbitrary. Now, if you are below that, 300, and I'm not going to get into science stuff, everyone don't listen to me. So I put that as my disclaimer. But if you're, below 300, but you're not suffering from low testosterone issues, like you don't have erectile dysfunction, you don't have like issues getting out of bed in the morning, you're not depressed, you're not moody, you pretty much just like, you don't have like, supremely low muscle mass compared to normal men, then you're probably just androgen sensitive and it's fine.
Wow. So I noticed this theme in you of like, I don't care what anything's happening. I'm controlling what I'm controlling and I'm being exactly who I want to be. Were you always like this as a kid? Or was this something that you have developed over time?
Yeah, I think it's a skill that's developed over time. I mean, I think there's definitely like, when we talked about deprivation earlier, I definitely felt deprived of money. I've always wanted to make a lot of money. That's like been a very big desire of mine. And I just have gotten better and better at pursuing that goal. Like in the beginning, I just had general motivation, but I had no skill. So it's like, I heard this works. I heard, like you wander and you just have lots of activity to try and burn through things to figure out like what starts to give you some feedback and then you start moving in that direction. I've always been motivated. I've always been pretty high achieving. I don't have the like, I failed school and like, I was great at school. I think I had 13 AP credits going into college. I finished college in 3 years, magna cum laude. I was vice president of the powerlifting team. I was president of the fraternity. Like I always tried to fuck life. You know what I mean? Everyone's different, but like at the same time, there's plenty of people who didn't have any of that stuff and then crush it later. But I think you can just always make the decision to do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it. Like the idea that you haven't been successful for your entirety of your life has absolutely no impact on why you can't be successful right now. The work that needs to be done for someone to succeed remains unchanged. And so like whenever you choose to start that, and everything before that moment doesn't really matter.
Well, I think it's easier when you have momentum behind you.
For sure. Yeah, I'm just saying like objectively,
Yes.
if you had zero momentum and you still do the thing, it still works.
My thought is that it might be harder if you don't have that previous success to draw from.
Totally.
Might hold you back in ways of maybe being more cautious, self-doubt, things like that.
Yeah, I think I use the term chunking up or chunking down, but like the biggest predictor of future success is past success, regardless. And so the idea is like, okay, well, you might be like, well, I want to take this big jump, but I've never done that before. Like, how do I take this jump? How do I take this risk? Right? Well, it's like, can you generalize some of the other things you've done in the past that would give you some level of confidence that this is not unreasonable? And so it's like, if I've been really disciplined at school and exercise, then it might follow that I'll be relatively disciplined with my job. Is it guaranteed? No, but I could still make a generalization it's plausible. And so I think it's like stacking those wins as low as a common denominator as you can. I mean, for somebody who's absolutely just like sucking at life right now, then it's like, if you got out of bed today, then cool, call it a W. You know what I mean? Like just regress it back and then you start, just like you'd add weight to a bar, you add weight to the goals.
So is it as simple as just waking up in the morning? Great. Then it would be take a walk for 10 minutes. Sure. Great. And then just building on that.
Yeah, and I think your bar always moves. Like when a toddler in the beginning begins speaking, they approximate the word mom. They're like, "Mmm," and you're like, yeah, you're so excited. But like, a 10-year-old says mom and you tell them to screw off, right? Like the bar moves.
I'm not your mom.
Right. Yeah, sure. I'm not your mom. No, but the bar moves because like your standards for excellence continue to improve. So it's like, if you're like, don't use someone else's standards, use your own. And once you can say mom really consistently, then like start saying sentences.
I want to know, because we talked, I think it was the first or second time you came on the podcast about trauma.
Sure.
Because you have very interesting takes on trauma. Okay. Yeah. And recently, not to be that guy, but I feel like I have gotten more similar to your beliefs with regard to trauma. Everyone goes through traumatic experiences in their life. It's their response to that trauma that actually ends up making the difference. Now, I saw this video. I don't know if you've seen this before, but it was someone holding the baby. Yeah. And then they like knock on a doorway nearby or a door nearby. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I hit your head. And the baby's like, wah, and just starts crying as though it's in pain. Right. And that could be a traumatic experience for that baby. And then I saw another video of a baby that took a tumble, like a pretty bad spill. Yeah. And the mom's like, oh, look, we just had a happy spill. Oh, ha, 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 this is so funny. And the baby starts laughing. Yeah. And like one actually went through something and one did not, yet the responses were completely different. So I think now my opinion is from these two baby TikToks is that like, it really has to do with the way that other people respond to your trauma and then your perception of how you should be feeling after a specified event occurs.
I agree.
Which is crazy.
I'll add one piece to what you said.
Yes.
Which is that you said people experience trauma. I would just erase that. Things happen.
Things happen. No need to label good or bad.
Right. Things happen to people.
Its meaning is really just
that's
what
a
you
very
attribute
hard
to
switch,
it, though.
Totally.
That's a whole different level to this.
Sure. Like, was I traumatized by the $15 million loss? No. Was it unfortunate? Yes. Did I deal with it? Yes. Okay. I'm not traumatized. I'm not like, I can never make a bet again. No. Like, it is what it is. Things happen. The toddler can spill paint on your baby Ruth card. What do you do now? Are you traumatized? Do you blame your baby? Like, oh, man, I've got all these issues because my baby.
But you know what? But there could be. But you know what? There could be instances that happen that definitely change your entire mindset. Like, let's say you are driving fast on the freeway all the time, and then you get in a horrible car accident. Yeah. You could be terrified of driving, especially at that speed, for good reason. Maybe your entire perception is changed after that.
Trauma is just accelerated learning. That's all it is. It's accelerated learning. And the question is just, is the behavior that I learned something that I want? Does it serve me? Now, if you were driving really fast and then you drive slower, does that serve you? Well, for getting places on time, you might have to leave a couple minutes earlier. Besides that, like, does it serve you and the likelihood that you die in a car accident? Yeah, probably. So is that traumatic, or is that like you just learned? I think just calling it trauma makes it this really heavy thing.
Well, here's maybe a better example.
Yeah, sure.
There's that video of a car on the freeway where all of a sudden the car is just driving along, going the speed limit, and a tire, at the no fault of that car, tire comes out, the car flips.
Yeah.
I would be terrified of driving just because you never realize how dangerous it is until you're in an experience like that.
Yeah. And then the question would be, is that the lesson that you want to learn from that? Or is it that there was a baby and he'd ruined your baby Ruth card? Like, you were driving and something happened. It's just like, is the adaptation, is the learning useful? If it isn't, then maybe we don't call it trauma. Maybe we call it bad luck.
The most effective way that I've learned to sell. What you want to do is give someone a vision of what their life's going to be like when they're experiencing the benefits. And so you want to explain to them exactly how to take it before you make the ask. What we would do is say, hey, this one is going to help you do benefit. The way that I need you to take it, is that you're going to take 2 of these in the morning. Then I ask a question. And I'm like, what do you do every day no matter what in the morning? Do you wake up and smoke a cigarette? Do you drink a cup of coffee? Do you take a shower? Like, brush your teeth? Like, what's something you do every morning? And then they say, well, I brush my teeth every morning. I'm like, cool. So I don't want you to put this in your cupboard because you'll forget about it. I want you to put it next to your toothbrush so we don't have to make a new habit. And they're like, oh. And what I want you to do, piece of tape, put a 2 on it. I want you to take 2 of them. We're gonna put it next to your toothbrush. Got it? That's number 1. I would go through that with each of the products that I have, and I would say, okay, you can have all these, you're good to go. Did you just want to use the cards you have on file? Now they don't have to take their wallet out. They don't have to make another purchase decision. They just have to say yes. It's a one-click upsell. That is a combination of a prescriptive close and having Ghost products to set up trust. You're also being a good coach by showing them how they're going to make this happen in the real world. And this is obviously a consumption-based product. Any product that you want someone to use, they have to use it at a certain point. And so we want to figure out ways to associate the usage of the product with something they're already doing. Getting someone to make a new habit is incredibly difficult. Getting someone to break a habit is incredibly difficult. And so we just want to piggyback on habits they already have. And so that makes you both a better salesperson and better coach, like overall, if you're trying to help someone. And so that kind of selling process, that set, close, gain the trust, make the prescription, works unbelievably well. And then if for some reason the person's like, well, how much does this cost? Blah, 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 blah. Then you can say, well, are you on a budget? And if they're like, I'm on a budget, that's like, okay, then would you like me to order these in order of importance and the things that I think you absolutely need to have versus things that'll just get you more benefits faster? What I would then do is take off 1 and say, this would be the lowest one I'd remove. Does this work for you? And if they're like, I can't do that, I'd be like, we're really getting into the bare bones here. I'd be like, I could take this one out, but like, this is what I want you to add to your diet to replace this thing. You don't want to show that what you took out isn't important, because then it looks like you're selling stuff doesn't matter. So like, these are ingredients, but you're gonna have to eat a shitload of broccoli now. All right, so you okay with that? You know what, I'll just get the thing. Okay, cool, now it's back in. Hopefully when you're selling something, you're trying to solve a problem. If they don't buy the thing, then you reintroduce the problem that you were solving. So it's like, hey, I don't want you to have to eat a pound of broccoli, which is why I had this. They're trusting me to make the prescription because that's why they're paying you for expertise. And then you can pause and say, well, are there things that are your old identity that you're gonna stop doing as a result of doing this program? Are you going to go out less? Are you gonna drink less? Are you gonna smoke less? Are you gonna whatever less? I'm like, cool, well, how much of that do you do? Cool, we just found some money, don't worry about it. Let's associate it with these new activities, new identity. If this sounds really smooth, I've done this a lot of times. You'll get used to it. And I think one of the best gifts you can have is trying to tack yourself into an existing sales process of a big business. So if you work at a business that sells lots of low ticket stuff, like think car washes, massage, think nails, think hair, stuff where they just see lots of people every day at low tickets, see if you can work with a business owner and incorporate some sort of, inject yourself into their sales process so that you can can get rep after rep after rep after rep, and it will teach you more about the skill of selling and dealing with people than any course ever will, and it will equip you for whatever you want to sell for the rest of your life. So one of the best things I ever did was do tons and tons of transactions at low tickets, so that when I got to selling higher ticket, more expensive stuff, I was like, oh my God, this is a breeze. If you sold services, let's say you sold web design services, and you had like a laundry list of stuff, you could say, hey, we can do this, but it's not necessarily our core capability, and it would probably cost you more if we did it because we'd have to allocate more resources. So there's guys in the Philippines that will do it for you. I've got a connection I can talk to you to about after this call. And if you really want to be sneaky about it, if you're the owner, it's harder. If you're a salesperson, owners, tell your salespeople this, you can have it seem like they're leaning on their side of the table to be like, hey man, like you don't need to worry about this. Like just, I'll hook you up with a number of a guy. And then the salesperson becomes incredibly trusted. It becomes like they're on that side of the table. But what the person doesn't know is that they're trying to sell the other stuff. At the end of the day, the goal as a salesperson is to move to their side of the table. If you start the conversation across the table, the goal is to end shoulder to shoulder so that you're both looking at the decision together with the same information to make the best decision for the person. The reason you aren't where you want to be is because you can't do things repeatedly. And so most people can't do one thing over and over again. You need to be able to do the doing without seeing the result of your doing. And you have to keep doing it. And if you can keep doing things independent, and this is both ways, if it goes really well, you keep doing the thing that got you there. And if it's not going well, yet, you keep doing the thing so that you get good enough that one day it will. And that's the shift that most people don't make. And I think that's why most people just stay poor. And the reality is that if you can commit to the actions and the behaviors and the traits that you will grow through doing, then at the end of this process, a decade later, you will be the type of person who can do something for a long period of time and wait. And I promise you that if you have that trait, money will never be a constraint in your life. And this is from Atomic Habits. Every winner and every loser have the same goals. So when you measure yourself by having this external thing, and people are like, set goals. Everyone wants to be rich. Everyone wants to have a six-pack. Your goals don't make you unique. It's the activities that you do that make you unique. The goal of the winner is to commit to the activities. The goal of the loser is to commit to the goal. 52% of 18-year-olds, high school seniors, think they're gonna be millionaires by 25. The world is going to be shook. Many of you will fail. And that's because most of you have the same goal. 52% you think you're gonna be a millionaire, right? That's just the math. But only a small percentage will, because if you want to be a millionaire, you're not going to focus on making $1 million. You're going to focus on the stuff that makes $1 million. And so when you can divorce the activities from the outcome, then you can focus on the doing, which whether your income does this over that period of time, your self-esteem remains the same because you're committing to what you can control. If you can make that shift, it will change your life. So I started making podcasts 6 years ago. I committed to that process. When I signed on with a YouTube vendor a few years ago, on the first call, I said, I'd like to have this channel be something in 5 to 10 years. I was like, we'll look at it then and see if it was worth continuing to do. I was like, but I'm in for a decade. And he stopped me afterwards. He was like, I've literally never had a client say that to me, ever. He's like, they're all like, how can I get leads in the first 90 days from YouTube? And like, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, if we're making progress, I'm good. I will commit to that. I think that if you can think that way, you will get what you want. And then people will ask you a decade from now, man, how did you have this overnight success and blah, 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 blah. And aren't you like, don't the followers and the fans, like, how does it not get to your head? And you're like, because it was never the goal. And so I feel just as good at year 1 as I do at year 8, because the activities that I committed to remain the same. If you can think that way and you can shift your perspective, it'll decrease your emotional ups and downs. And I think we all need ways to decrease our emotional ups and downs in the game of business, because like we need to have second lives and third lives and fourth lives. And the way to do that is to not put your life, your game playing life, in something that you can't control, but putting all your game playing life in the things you can. Right now, we just crossed our 400th episode. 400 episodes. Like if I did one a week, that's 52. 1 a week for a year, that'd be 8 years of doing that if I had 400 episodes. I'm at like year 6. If you make 400 long form pieces of content, I guarantee you that your following would be bigger than it is today. Well, how long is that gonna take? As long as it takes, because the goal was never the outcome. The goal was to do the thing. Want to start a business? You should probably get rid of your shame because you're going to get embarrassed. So you just ask lots of people. And if you ask enough people and say, hey, I'm giving a free session to show how my whole method works, and I'll do it for free. And if it makes sense for them, awesome. And what that is really more of a half assessment into a sales pitch. You do a little bit of at the beginning, show them one easy win that they can have. They see an improvement, and then you transition like, this is how I teach. Do you like that? You give the first 5 to 10 for free, and you do that. You say you have to do your homework, and every day you don't do your homework, I will bill you. You have some skin in the game, and then they might even like that, where they're going to be way more motivated to actually do the work. And then in so doing, they will get even better test scores. At the end of that, there's 3 things you're going to ask for them: feedback on things that could be better, viewer testimonial, and you're going to ask them for a referral. There's the big 3 that you're going to do in exchange for doing the work for free. If you get more than 10 people who really want, then guess what? You can just start charging. Once you have the referrals and the testimonials, post the testimonials. Let me know if you're interested too. Very simple. They post. Anybody who engages, you can DM them with better offer. That was my first 10. My next 10, I'm doing for half off. Those are not super hard right hooks because they're inspiring for a lot of people. People think it's cool. And then you have call to actions which drive into your DMs, and then you can upsell them from there. Beyond that, the other 2 ways would be reaching out to people who you don't know, not just people you do know, and then running ads. Most people could just do people they know, referrals, going to sports teams where they need tutoring and saying, hey, I know some of these guys are worried about getting into school. I know they're not trying to go to Ivy, but they need to get above an X to get in with their sports scholarship or whatever. You can go to the teams, it spreads really quickly, and then all the lacrosse dudes or all the hockey dudes could come at the same time after practice. If you do a good job, the word of mouth will spread. That's it. It doesn't have to be a complicated amount. Maybe it takes you 6 months to build up your student base to be at $1,000 or $1,100 a day. Would you rather do that than spend 4 years in college, go into debt, and not make money the entire time and have to work full time to do that? Your call. So you could do all that stuff that I just said on your own with basically no help and get yourself to a top 1% earning income, which is better than anything you're going to get after college anyways. And you can do it in 6 months without risking the money, the time, and the debt. But if you wanted to go Super Saiyan, you can have other people do those things for you, because then you just get really good at getting the students to sign up and say yes. And then you templatize your process for how you get them to do more problems, because that's the most predictable way of increasing their score. And so then you have a teacher who you can pay $50 an hour. You make the spread between the 280 and the 50. And many teachers will happily work for $50 an hour. And if you really wanted to run really crazy margins, which I prefer to, I like to have my service-based margins at 80% or higher, which means that my cost per unit below 56. So 50 works there. That means you can pay good people. They could make more than they're making with the real job. They're happy to do it. The students are happy to pay it because it's less than one-on-one. And then all the while, you get to scrape everything off the top without ever having risk. And then those 4 hours you get back, what do? You promote more. You market more, you sell more, you get more people in, and you find other teachers. So then what happens is you start getting a development pipeline for getting students in and a pipeline for getting teachers in. Hey, teacher said 50. Do you have any other teacher friends who you think would be good at this? Yeah, I've got 10 friends who would love to make twice as much money in half the time. Great, send them my way. Then you get a line of teachers who are waiting for you to find them students and a line of students that are ready to come in groups. You want to go God mode. You can do 4 teachers rather than 1, and they're now getting paid $50 an hour. You're still making your same 280, but you're making 1,100-ish per hour because you got 4 guys working. So at the end of the day, just that half day of 4 hours with 4 people working, you're making $4,400 a day, and you paid each of them $200 each, $800 off $4,400. You're looking at $3,600 a day. Does anybody know what it takes to make $1 million a year in income? Survey says $3,300 a day. You're at 36.